The Dallas Cowboys need a defensive coordinator, and a favorite has emerged. We'll break down Jim Leonhard and his fit with Dallas next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode every game day during the NFL playoffs. FanDuel is giving new customers even more ways to get in on the action. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool. And on today's show, we're going to talk about a unbelievable wildcard weekend and how it impacts the Cowboys. We're going to talk about the status of their second first-round pick later in the show. But later, let's start with some news about the Cowboys defensive coordinator search, because they've thrown out a lot of names. We've heard a lot of whispers about who they might like. And it appears that Jim Leonhard, the passing game coordinator of the Denver Broncos, is an early favorite for the job. First of all, what's your take on that, and how would he fit in Dallas?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Jim Leonhard. Been a fan of him since Wisconsin days. He's kind of had a winding career. Obviously, he was a former NFL player. He became a coach and spent some time in college. Has made his way into the pros, and he's currently the assistant head coach and defensive passing game coordinator for the Denver Broncos. So, yeah, and you know, it sounds like he is a favorite to be, a candidate to come here. Now, there's a lot of things that are kind of tied around this happening, right? Like Vance Joseph, who is his current defense coordinator and his boss, is potentially getting head coaching looks that may complicate things, because whether or not he wants to take Jim Leonhard with him, Denver may want to make Jim Leonhard their defensive coordinator, and they may have the kind of inside track to make that happen. But I think as far as a candidate goes, I mean, this is a guy that a lot of us have been asking for a long time, even before he came into the NFL. And I'm excited that this is the kind of guy that the Cowboys are considering. And I think, frankly, it shows that maybe Brian Schottenheimer has control over this coaching search more than maybe we would have expected at this point in his young career.
Well, we heard whispers months ago that Jim Leonhard was somebody that Brian Schottenheimer was interested in last year, but Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, Will McClay, whoever made the decision, sounded like they wanted a more veteran guy with a first-year head coach. And I don't necessarily blame them. I just think they maybe hired they hired the wrong guy that paired with Brian Schottenheimer. But now that Schotty is going into year 2, I think they are more open to having some fresh ideas. And what I like about Jim Leonhard is some of the coaches that he's coached under throughout his career. I mean, he's played in a Rex Ryan defense on that Rex Ryan team that went to the AFC Championship game twice. I believe he was the starting safety. He played with the Ravens. If you watched him at all as a defensive coordinator in Wisconsin, I mean, those defenses were tough, and they used a lot of creative things. And I think that's what I'm so excited about here, Landon, is that Leonhard doesn't necessarily have a scheme, but I think he is somebody that can be multiple and can be adaptable. And that's what Schottenheimer wants.
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is I would caution against thinking that he's going to bring the Denver type of defense here.
Correct.
I do. That is Vance Joseph's defense. I think he's being part of a defensive system, not necessarily his defensive system. I do agree that if I had to best describe it, it's funny because I'm kind of going through in my head the things that he likes to do, and it really is kind of a perfect fit of Eberflus, except creative, right? Because he likes to do a lot of cover 3, cover 1. He likes to play a lot of match coverage, except do it in a creative way with different rules. And then he likes to play 5-man services. He likes some pressure stuff. These are all things that Eberflus kind of was forced into, that this guy obviously has expertise in. And then on top of that, like, it's not like he's taking nothing from Denver and walking away. I think he will be very much influenced by what his time there, much like I'm sure he was influenced by his time with Rex Ryan as well, who kind of runs a different sort of defense than what we saw Leonhard run at Wisconsin when he got his own opportunity to do whatever he wanted, right? So I think it's going to be scheme-based, but I think it's going to be, if he gets an opportunity to be the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator, if they can work that out, he is kind of a great candidate, because I think it is one of those situations where it's something new, it's something exciting, it's something cutting edge, and it's also something familiar enough because of its basis and kind of cover 1, cover 3. And we've already done so many 5-man surface things that I think that the Cowboys will at least have an ability to kind of hit the ground running, hopefully.
I think I have 2 concerns, but otherwise I really like Leonhard as a candidate. Number one, he would be a first-time play caller in the NFL. Now, he's done it in college, so that I think that does help a little bit. And you look at like those Wisconsin defenses, I think 2021 was the fewest amount of yards per game that they allowed in school history. And Wisconsin's been playing football for a long time. And honestly, what I liked about that Wisconsin defense is they had guys like Leo Chanel and Nick Herbig, and they were multiple. They would move these guys all over. They would sim pressure. They would line up Herbig over the center. So I do think he's going to be multiple, but I also worry that he's so young that I wonder what kind of assistance he could attract to this Cowboys team, because that's always one of your concerns is when you're hiring a new defensive coordinator, who's your secondary coach? Who's your, defensive line coach? Maybe he's got a really good list that makes you feel better. It's just an unknown right now.
Yeah, you'd have to think that he'd probably be leaning heavily on trying to poach guys from the Denver group, while Vance Joseph is doing the same, right? So yeah, and like outside of that, what kind of ties does he have in the NFL to NFL assistant coaches? That's where I think you would have to lean in heavily to what Schottenheimer has already been doing, right? And maybe that's what some of these earlier interviews that the Cowboys did can also help you out, right? Maybe with some of these other assistant coach types interviews they did previously.
One more thing about the fit with Dallas. I believe Denver this year was like 5th or 6th in blitz rate. And again, you can't necessarily translate 1-to-1 because he's not calling plays in Denver. But if that's going to hold, then that means I've got to believe that the Cowboys this offseason are going to be very aggressive trying to fix their secondary. They could probably live with the pieces they have up front if you're going to be that blitz heavy. You can't on the back end. You've got to find guys in the secondary who are smart, who can tackle, who can play, in one-on-one situations.
But the good news about that is that those guys are easier to find than the young, athletic, lockdown man cover guys. Correct. So if you want to go cheap but still get a solid defensive backfield, it's easy to go out and get a veteran average safety who at least can run these unique play calls that they'll have on the back end and at least understand and play the rules appropriately. And if that's the way to kind of gain the advantage as opposed to having the athletic man coverage guys who can lock a guy down, that's just a different way to skin that cat. Excuse the phrase.
I still like Flores as my favorite option. I don't know how viable that is considering he's still getting head coaching interviews. For sure. But if it's not Flores, I do think Leonhard is probably my favorite option out there because I just want somebody outside of the building. Like this has been my biggest knock for the Cowboys is that they hire guys that they know. And I really think they could use some fresh ideas and some fresh perspective. And I think Jim Leonhard could give that to them.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what they did. They tried to do on the offensive side of the ball, right? And I think that's the selling point that Schottenheimer can give to Jerry a little bit is, hey, we went out and got a bunch of new guys that you didn't really know, and we've had some success. I mean, look at Connor Riley, look at Clayton Adams. Let's go out and do the same on the defense and see if we can't cobble together a group that is equally adept and young and injecting fresh ideas on the defensive side of the ball and see if it takes.
All right, let's talk about the Wildcard weekend because it was
wild,
and
wild
very good indeed for the Cowboys, which is always nice. I know they weren't playing, but this is about as well as it could have gone for the Dallas Cowboys. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Whether you're starting a new routine or jumping into player projections for the first time, trying something new can feel like a challenge. But with Prize Picks, it always feels good to be right. And with high pressure football matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every single night, the action never slows down, and Prize Picks lets you stay in control. Prize Picks is the daily fantasy app that makes watching sports even more exciting by letting you build lineups based on player projections, no drafts, no waiting, just pick more or less and play your way. Getting started on Prize Picks is quick and simple, and the app is super easy to navigate. So download the Prize Picks app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. This episode is brought to you by Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets change the game, and it's people moving the action. So when the momentum shifts, you can move with it. I've always known the game, but I've never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part, live in a market powered by people. You're not no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Future and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. If you haven't done so already, check out the Everydayer Club. For just $5 a month, you're going to get ad-free episodes to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, plus exclusive Discord server access when you can talk ball with us all day long. Check it out at lockedoncowboys.supercast.com. All right, let's talk about the wildcard games. And I want to start with the Packers-Bears game because it's the most important game for the Cowboys. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but it was always nice watching Green Bay go down. And it was, listen, was I being a little petty and hoping that Trayvon Diggs would play poorly or not play at all? I was, and he didn't.
Yeah, and I think he played one snap, and I think I tweeted out that they must have been wanting to play the type of coverage he doesn't like to play and doesn't play well, or the type of coverage he does want to play or doesn't play well. Yeah, they ran it at him, didn't they?
They ran a wide receiver screen to Luther Burden, and he was about 12 yards off the ball, and he got ran over. This was on like a 3rd and 10, and he got ran over, and they immediately pulled him out of the game and never played again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. It was shocking to watch that game in a lot of ways because, especially after watching the first half and seeing them being so dominant, them being Green Bay, and then I think we've seen it all throughout the season that the Bears will do this, right? That they'll let these teams get ahead early, and then they'll create these kind of furious comebacks. It's almost, and it's funny too, because it does feel like the difference is the defense, right? Like the difference is that the defense plays terribly early in these games, and then suddenly just kind of locks down. And as much as everyone is praising Chicago, and rightfully so for the way that they came back in this game, Green Bay gave this game away. There was absolutely, and it's not even just as bad as it seems. Like it's worse, right? There were multiple of untapped into opportunities that Green Bay gave Chicago that Chicago just couldn't avail itself from. Obviously, the biggest one is that huge fumble that ended up going out of bounds. But there were several other times when Green Bay gave Chicago opportunities, and Chicago didn't take them up on that offer, right? So the fact that they were up by so much, the fact that they had, I think it was 7 opportunities in the second half and couldn't score, and then to just watch it all kind of go down, knowing that it obviously had a direct relation to exactly how the Cowboys are going to pick, and we'll talk about that later. All of it was just made for an incredible viewing experience, and the Schottenheimer was quite incredible.
Well, just big picture from the two games that we saw on Sunday in the NFC games, and even actually, I'm going to throw the Rams game in there as well. The three NFC games we saw, none of those teams have elite defenses outside of Philadelphia. I mean, Philadelphia is the one that has talent galore, but we saw the 49ers win a game with, I mean, substandard talent is being very nice about it, right?
Nice. Yeah.
The Rams have a couple good players in the front, including Jared Verse and Kobe Turner. Their back end is made up of basically a bunch of guys that are just, cast-offs. And we saw the Bears defense. I mean, they were awful for most of the season. They got a lot of turnovers. I don't think they got any turnovers in this game, but they were able to make a couple big stops. I think if you're a Cowboy fan, it's encouraging that you're seeing these teams win in the playoffs without having 5 all-pros on that side of the ball. However, we just didn't see any timely stops from the Cowboys defense really at all outside of the Philadelphia game on the right before Thanksgiving. That was basically it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's you need in those. It doesn't take a dominating, smothering defense to be effective when you have a good offense. It's like you said, you have to be able to make the play in the big time moments when you need it. So you need to have a fastball. Like you need to have an ability to, okay, this is our bread and butter when it's time, to win the game on the defensive side of the ball. This is what we're going to rely on to win. And if you don't have that, whether it's scheme or an individual player that you rely on, you're going to have a bad defense. You're going to have such a bad defense that you're not going to be able to win those, let's say, 4 games every year that you need. Like its offense isn't going to help you. Like you need the defense to make a play to either get the ball back or to finish the game or whatever it is. And obviously Dallas didn't get the opportunity to kind of be in a lot of those situations.
And I want to give the 49ers a lot of credit because what they were doing, on their entire defense all year was really cool to see. But one of the things that like Robert Saleh has them doing really well is tackling. And it doesn't take a lot of talent to tackle. It's a want-to thing. And honestly, we saw this from Diggs on that one play. And even Chicago in the first 3 quarters is that these defensive backs don't want to tackle. And it just puts your defense in such a bad spot if you have secondary guys that don't want to tackle. I'm almost to the point where the guys that are pure coverage guys but don't really want to stick their nose in the run game, I'm just devaluing them because teams are just going to screen you to death. They're going to design their run game to get to the outside and make those corners tackle. That saved the 49ers in so many different ways. And even in this game, like in the second half, the Eagles could not run the ball because their secondary guys were coming up and filling gaps and making tackles. I think that's a big issue the Cowboys have to address this offseason.
I mean, it's already been an issue for the Cowboys in their past. I mean, think about the Dan Quinn defenses, right? Like, I mean, those guys on the outside, Diggs obviously was well documented, struggled to tackle on the outside or struggled to want to tackle on the outside. And it caused problems for us that teams would run to the outside and defensive backs were not creating contain if the safety wasn't getting into the alley. And yeah, it's a real issue. You need defensive backs that are not just corner guys. You need them to be versatile enough that they can be relied upon to make tackles, at least make the effort to, push the guy into the containment that you have designed to spill the guy back inside. But like, if your corners aren't going to tackle, the NFL is too good now. Like running backs are too fast. They'll get to the outside. They can screen past you. Like you said, it's just quick stuff. Guys like the Cowboys, like they'll throw a slant and they'll just dare you to try to tackle them. So you need guys who can tackle. It's a huge part of playing on the perimeter nowadays.
Well, and it's not only corners because like Donovan Wilson can be a big hitter, but I wouldn't necessarily call him a super reliable tackler. And that's why even in like this Buffalo game, I was watching Buffalo Jacksonville. Buffalo safeties are really old, but the reason why they can still go out there and play and get stops is because they can tackle. I know it sounds so simple, but when you watch this Cowboys defense and you compare it to the other defenses in the playoffs that don't have a significant more amount of talent than what Dallas has, It's the biggest thing that stands out.
Honestly, and I know they lost, but to me, that's the thing that really stood out to me about Carolina and why Carolina was able to hang around in that Rams game is that it just felt like their defense was aggressive, was where they were supposed to be, and they made tackles. And I think the Rams, were kind of start-stop when, they were 7-point, more than 7-point favorites to beat Carolina. And Carolina gave them fits again because they played them really tough on defense.
Yeah, it was really fun to watch. The other thing is just coaching. Like, I'm just amazed at what Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh did with the 49ers. Like, that team is so beat up. I mean, I'm going to the point where it's like, I'm just tired of excuses. Like, I don't want to hear from the Joneses or from anybody that, hey, Deron Bland was out for 4 games, and that's why our defense fell apart. I mean, they were without Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, and they were down to their 5th and 6th linebackers. They signed Eric Kendricks, and he comes out and plays awesome. They lose George Kittle in the first quarter. Their number 1 receiver didn't play a snap for them all year, and they go on the road and get a gritty win. Coaching matters so much in the NFL, and that's why the Cowboys can't afford to skimp out this cycle when it comes to the defensive coordinator and their secondary coach and defensive line coach. They've got to nail these hires.
100%. If you want to go to the Super Bowl, you cannot have a huge deficit on the X's and O's side of the game. It's not everything, but it is definitely something that you have to account for. And
Right.
The Cowboys have gone into these games at a deficit. It feels like these last few years. They have to fix that.
All right, let's talk about the Cowboys draft picks for 2026 because they got a huge win in round 1 of the playoffs. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The Wildcard round is here. We've got one more game left, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. And each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts that you can apply to the bets that you like the most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boost you want to apply. The boost allow you to lean into the games that you like. Like, I love the Steelers +3 against Houston. I just think they're going to win at home. That crowd's going to be loud. The defense is going to play well. And with your profit boost, you can get an even bigger payout on that game. So visit FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. All right, when the Cowboys made the Micah Parsons trade, I think we were assuming that pick was going to be in the late 20s or maybe even 30s. And honestly, Landon, there were times this year where I thought that was a given that the Packers are at least getting to the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
But they lose their final 5 games of the year once Parsons left the lineup with his torn ACL. And now the Cowboys hold the 20th pick. If you would have told me back in August, that day we were really grumpy that they traded Micah Parsons, that they were getting the 20th pick, I don't think it would have changed our opinions on the trade, but I do think it would have softened the blow a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think you and I'm glad that you brought this up too, because I think that this is something that the expectation that we should be remembering now. I mean, you and I were talking about like them being the Super Bowl favorites,
I mean, like they were for a while. Yeah.
And so for them to go from 32 to 20 is they moved up a third of the draft board, right? Almost half.
I remember week 1 when they beat Detroit, it was like, oh man, this is going to be a long season for Cowboy fans watching this Packers team. And they've never made it to 10 wins this season.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I think it's in relation to where we had our expectations when the trade went down. This is fantastic news. I forgot that the Cowboys picks and the Green Bay picks are only 8 picks away. That's pretty wild, and the Cowboys top pick ended up being a lot higher than we had hoped even a couple weeks ago. So yeah, the Cowboys made out like bandits with this duo of draft picks for this 2026 draft. And it really has worked out well. I mean, obviously no one is, going back and changing their opinions on the Parsons trade, but the way it's played out so far has played out very well for the Cowboys.
Well, in terms of value, you mentioned
Yes.
like, let's say it was 28, right? That would
Right.
have been them losing, I think, in the divisional round or so. The difference in value is a third round pick. And I think there's going to be a lot of teams when we get to the draft that some of these teams in the championship round, they might want to come up for an offensive tackle or a receiver or an edge rusher. And the Cowboys could easily slip back down to pick 28, 29, pick up a third round pick. And maybe that's where you grab a running back, or that's where you grab a nickel corner. It also allows you the opportunity to get two of the top, let's say 15 or 16 players in the draft. I mean, we know the way this usually works. Like the players that you get at 26 usually aren't all that different than the guys that you get at 20, but there's a chance that you get a guy with a round one grade that falls to that pick.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that there's a lot of guys this year that are at the top of the draft talent wise that are at positions that aren't necessarily valued at that rate. So I think that there's going to be opportunities for you to get, like, linebackers. One of them, you may get the number one, let's say Arvell Reese, you don't consider Arvell Reese linebacker. There's a chance that you could get Sonny Styles at 12 and still get the top cornerback at 20, right? Like, I mean, that certainly is a possibility. So
yeah.
Well,
and I wouldn't even be surprised, Landon, if they traded up. If they went, let's say they got their edge rusher or their corner at 12, and then they see that, making up a name, let's say it's David Bailey is available at 16, and they ship some picks from 2027 to go get David Bailey because they feel like these are two instant day one starters. It just gives you so many more options and gives you so much more flexibility going into the draft.
Yeah, and the other way around too. If you wanted to trade back from 20, like you mentioned, and go back to 28, I think it makes it a lot more palatable because you're still going to be in the not the very, very end of the first round. You still got, some room. So I think the talent will still be good. So yeah, I think that it gives you a ton of options. You gained a ton of value just by watching a team that you hate lose. It was a great time. I loved it.
Last thing before we go. The Cowboys had the option of trading their 2026 first round pick to the Jets for Quinnen Williams or a 2027 first. Now we still have to see how that plays out. It looks like the 2027 draft could be better, but if you told me back then that the pick this year was going to be the 20th pick, I probably would rather have just kept this pick, right? Because you're going to need those guys to be to produce right away this year anyways. I kind of like keeping this pick and trading away the 2027 one for Quinnen.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of maneuvering that's going to happen in that 2027 draft because of the talent there. I think trying to predict how that was going to play out.
Well, I just the fact that if we would have done the Quinnen trade and gave up this year's first, the Green Bay first, yeah, I think you would have been gritting your teeth a little bit, like, ooh, the 20th pick. It's a little higher than we maybe thought it would be. But I mean, next year there's a chance that the Cowboys and Packers are both into the playoffs, and that pick is in the mid-20s, and you end up making the right decision.
Yeah, that certainly is possible. We'll see. And obviously, we end up getting the lesser of the two picks, no matter what it is. So, yeah, maybe there's an opportunity that this flips, and the lesser of the two picks is the Cowboys pick.
All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Make sure you subscribe and follow the podcast so you get all of the latest episodes. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Cowboys ad-free, plus members-only Discord server access, and so much more. Head over to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com to join the club. And for those of you on video, we can send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. And on audio, make your second listen the Locked On NFL podcast. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.